Okay, so let's continue the previous lesson that we've had. So this is a continuation of that lesson. So we already discussed about the five pillars of the Philippine criminal justice system, and as a process, we should start with the law enforcement, wherein its main function is to arrest or detain the offender, and a person or offender that is under the law enforcement is called suspect. And after the person has been arrested, here comes the prosecution who brings formal charges. And the person that is already under the prosecution is now being called respondent. After the information has been filed by the prosecutor to the court, then the court's job is to have the trial and adjudge a person as guilty if the evidence is strong. And now the person who's now in the court is called accused. And once the person has been adjudged as guilty, here comes the work of the correction, which is for custody, safekeeping, and rehabilitation of the offender. And the offender at this stage is now called convict. And the last process of the PCJS, or the last component, is the community. And the community's job is to accept that a person is now a rehabilitated person, and the offender is now called an ex-convict. Okay, so let's now proceed with the different types of law. And we all know that law is a rule of conduct, just and made an obligatory by legitimate authority for the general welfare and benefit of all people. So the first type of law is the law of the jungle. It's a primitive law, wherein it's a type of law that only the strong will survive. The second law is the common law. It is the body of principles, a type of law known in other countries as the body of principles, practice, usage, and rules of action. And we have the case law, and it is being made by justices. So it's a type of law wherein it is decided in appellate courts, especially by Supreme Court. And we have the criminal law. It's a type of law that defines crime, treats of their nature, and provides for their punishment. And we have the civil law. It refers to a law that governs the relations of a person with his family and other people. And we have right here the theory of justice. So we have here, this is an additional theory of justice. So we have discussed theory of justice for the previous lessons that we've had. So let's have this additional theory of justice. The first one is psychiatric imprisonment. When we say psychiatric imprisonment, this is a theory that simply believes that the offender who committed crime must be treated as a sick person, and instead of giving punishment through imprisonment, it must be forcibly treated for psychotherapy. And we have transformative justice. Let me emphasize on this further, because as what I've discussed previously, transformative justice, it's about improving the quality of life of the offender. Transformative justice, an additional knowledge in this, it's a theory of CJS in which it discourages such comparison and measurements, and it emphasizes the trust of the society in each member, including the trust in the offenders not to reoffend again, and of the victim not to avenge. And we have right here also the two models of CJS. We have the consensus model. This refers to a theory of CJS which argues that the organizations of the CJS do or should cooperate. And justice is a product of collaboration or cooperation. Whereas conflict, it's a type of theory of CJS wherein it assumes that the system components function primarily to serve their own interests. So basically, justice is a product of conflicts. And now let's proceed with the first pillar of the CJS. This is a comprehensive discussion of the law enforcement pillar. So the law enforcement pillar has its mission to prevent and control crimes, suspects, investigation, and filing of case, and assisting in prosecution. But the primary job of the law enforcement pillar in relation to the CJS is to arrest and detain of the offender. And law enforcement officers, they're critical in keeping the public safe. And their primary goal is to maintain order in their communities, ensure citizens are protected, and arrest any individuals who breaks the law. And yeah, law enforcement is the first pillar, the initial contact of the offender. And who is a law enforcement officer? It's an individual who enforces the law by discovering, deterring, or punishing people who violate the rules and norms governing the society. So if someone breaks the law, it's the job of the law enforcement officer to arrest or detain them. And here are the fundamental principles of law enforcement. The basic principle for which the police exist is really to prevent crime and disorder. Second one, it's the ability of the police to perform their duties is dependent upon public approval of police actions. And the third one, police must secure the willing cooperation of the public in voluntary observance of a law to be able to secure and maintain the respect of the public. And another, the degree of cooperation of the public that can be secured diminishes proportionately to the necessity of the use of physical force. Next, police seek and preserve public favor not by catering to public opinion, but by constantly demonstrating absolute impartial service. And next is police use physical force to the extent necessary to secure observance of a law or to restore order only when the exercise, persuasion, advice, and warning is found to be insufficient. So just to summarize all of it, the fundamentals principles of law enforcement is to really prevent crime and disorder, and they can only prevent that through the help of the community. And whenever they would implement the adherence of a law, they must make sure that the force that they're going to implement must not be excessive. It must be reasonable and necessary force. And another is police at all times should maintain a relationship with the public that gives reality to the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public are the police. The police, being only members of the public, are paid to give full time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interests of the community welfare and existence. So as what I've said, the police should really exercise good relationship with the community, because the community can help them when it comes to the prevention of the crime and disorder happening in the community. Another, police should always direct their actions strictly towards their function and never appear to usurp the powers of the judiciary. So the police must really just follow what is being mandated by them. And the test of police efficiency is the absence of crime and dishonor, not the visible evidence of police action in dealing with it. Policing. What is policing? Policing refers to activities. So we say policing, these are actually the approaches. The approaches, strategies used by the police officer in order for them to carry out and preserving the law and order of actions in the community. And we have right here the doctrine of policing by consent. This doctrine states that police are substantially unarmed body who rely upon community support and goodwill rather than force in the conduct of their duty. So this policing by consent simply means that the police can function well if there is a cooperation, collaboration, or heads up coming from the community. And this policing by consent, it does not believe that force should be put upon when it comes to adherence of the law. So we have right here police discretion in policing. It refers to the fact that a police work with very little direct supervision once they are in the field and often have to make choices about which course of action. So as a police officer, if you are doing your job, you have the prerogative to make choices given the situation as long as it is within your scope as a law enforcement officer. So we have right here the different styles of policing. We have the watchman style, and it focuses on maintaining order. It occurs in heavily populated communities that generate a high number of calls for police assistance. And we have the legalistic style. So it refers to a style or approach wherein it focuses on the implementation of law. And we have the service style, wherein the law enforcement places high emphasis on community opinion for public relations. It's more of giving service to the public. And we have reactive policing. It's a type of policing known as fire brigade policing or incident driven policing. So it involves following up on a civilian calls, notifying problem. So in reactive policing, an incident already happens before the law enforcement officer or police officer would respond. Whereas if we talk about proactive policing, it's a practice of deterring or preventing criminal activity by showing police presence and engaging the public to learn their concerns, thereby preventing crime from taking place in the first place. And we have problem oriented policing. So it identifies a repeated problem and then setting out to devise a solution. So this problem oriented policing, it it is about diagnosing and solving problems that are increasing crime risk. So it talks about hotspots. So it definitely checks out what is really the root cause why a certain community have a high crime rate. Whereas when we talk about evidence-based policing, it tries to seriously evaluate policing activity and perhaps uses properly designed trials to see what works to reduce crime or to respond to community needs. So this evidence-based policing, it uses crime analysis and data to identify those microplaces where crime is greatest. And we have community policing. It emphasizes proactive enforcement that proposes street crime, which can be reduced through greater community involvement and integration between citizens and police. In community policing, the law enforcement really need the cooperation and collaboration coming from the community. And we have the zero tolerance policing. It imposes strict punishment for infractions of a stated rule with the intention of eliminating undesirable conduct. So in zero tolerance policing, that even though if it is a small crime, not grave, it should be addressed right away. And we have right here the concepts of law enforcement and policing. In its purest form, when we talk about law enforcement, it requires an unwavering adherence to rules and procedures. So it it talks about people really following what has been mandated by the law. Whereas when we talk about policing, these are strategies, activities, approaches used by the law enforcement when it comes to crime fighting through community service and problem solving. And another here is the difference of law enforcement and policing. Talk about law enforcement, it implies compulsory compliance. People are expected that they should really comply with the law of the land. Policing, it is voluntary adherence, since that is just an approach, an activity that is its target is for crime fighting. And here are the different law enforcement agencies in the Philippines. And of course, the main law enforcement agency in the Philippines is the PNP, and it is tasked with enforcing the law, prevent and control crimes, maintain peace and order, and ensure public safety and internal security with the active support of the community. And its two main functions involves to serve and protect and to observe human rights and dignity of person. And here are the philosophy and core values of the PNP. The philosophy is service, honor, and justice, and and it we can saw this philosophy in their logo. And here are their core values: makadiyos, makabayan, makatao, and makakalikasan. And we have here some collateral functions of the PNP. So we have here to maintain forces and establish police volunteers to sustain the need of the law enforcement. So if you observe, we have police auxiliary, we have barangay tanod. So the police really need also their assistance when it comes to prevention of crime and disorder happening in the community. Second one, it's to maintain readiness in mobile forces and police volunteers, trained and equipped for employment in emergencies. So one and two, they're just the same. Three, to provide adequate, timely, and reliable intelligence for use by the PNP and in assistance to other agencies. So when it comes to intelligence information, the PNP also shares some information to other agencies who need that intelligence data. Also, the PNP organize, train, and equip a force for assignment to an insurgent affected area. So they also need some volunteers for those area who are affected by rebellion or any insurgency situation. And we have number five. It's to prepare and submit budgets to NAPOCOM chairman for the PNP units and offices. So PNP also have this function to really prepare their budgets for the policing, the strategies, the programs that they're going to do when it comes to crime fighting. And they also conduct research and develop doctrines. So aside from doing field work, combating crimes and disorders, they also conduct research. They develop doctrines, procedures, tactics, and techniques. They also procure weapons, equipment, and supplies essential to fulfillment of the functions assigned. So as the PNP has a lot of jobs. It's not just about field work. And also, they develop, supply, and maintain police camp, bases, and other installations, including lines of communication. And also, they assist other law enforcement agencies when called, requested, or directed. And they support as well the armed forces of the Philippines through information gathering and performance of its ordinary police functions and matters involving the suppression of insurgency. And also the PNP support the AFP in combat operations involving the suppression of insurgency and other serious threats to national security. So if the AFP needs the PNP's cooperation, then the AFP will just tap the PNP. If in case if there are rebellions, national national or internal threats happening in the Philippines. And we have right here a brief history of the PNP. So we have here the ancient roots. The forerunner of a contemporary police system was the practice of barangay chieftain. And the barangay chieftain is going to select able-bodied young men to protect their barangays during the night. So during ancient times, the police officer that served during that time are among those selected young men selected by the barangay chieftain. And its job is mostly on protecting the properties of the people, protect the crops of the people, the livestock from wild animals. And we have the Carabineros de Seguridad Pública. So this was organized in 1712 for the purpose of carrying the regulations of the Department of State. So they were armed. They are considered as the mounted police. And this kind of police organization discharged the duties of a port, harbor, and river police. And we have right here the Guardilleros or Cuadrillero. This was a body of rural police organized in each town and established by the Royal Decree of 18 on January 18 of 1836. So this decree provided that 5% of the able-bodied male inhabitants of each province were to be enlisted in the police organization for 3 years. And we have here the Guardia Civil. So I know you're very familiar with this one. And this was created by royal decree issued by the Crown on Feb 12, 1852. It's to partially relieve the Spanish peninsular troops of their work in policing towns. So it consisted of a body of Filipino policemen organized originally in each of the provincial capitals of the central provinces of Luzon under the Alcalde Mayor. And we have here General Howard Taft. So the Americans established the U.S.-Philippine Commission, and the first Governor General is General Howard Taft. So on January 9, 1901, the Metropolitan Police Force of Manila was organized because of this Act number 70. So of the Taft Commission, and this has become the basis for the celebration of the anniversary of the Manila's finest every January 9th. And we have the Act number 175. It is entitled An Act Providing for the Organization and Government of an Insular Constabulary. So the first name of the PNP is Insular Constabulary, and it is created via Act number 175. And we have Captain Henry Allen. He was the first chief of the Philippine Constabulary in 1901. And we have the Act number 193, and it created the Manila Police Department. And we have Captain George Curry. He was the first chief of police of the MPD in 1901. And here comes the Act number 255, the act that renamed the Insular Constabulary into Philippine Constabulary. So from Insular Constabulary, the second name of the police force in the Philippines is Philippine Constabulary. And we have the EO 389. So it ordered the Philippine Constabulary be one of the four services of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Currently, AFP has now the Navy, the Air Force, and we have the Army. But before, around 1940, the Philippine Constabulary is part of the AFP services. And we have the RA 4864. This is the act known as the Police Professionalization Act of 1966 that was created on September 8, 1966, that created the Police Commission, or now known as the NAPOLCOM. That's RA 4864. And we have the PD 765. It is known as the Integration Act of 1975, enacted on August 8 of 1975. So it established the Integrated National Police, composed of the Philippine Constabulary as a nucleus and the Integrated Local Police Forces as components under the Ministry of National Defense. So from Insular Constabulary to Philippine Constabulary, here comes the third one, which is the Integrated National Police. And we have right here the EO 1012. It transferred to the city and municipal government the operational supervision and direction over all INP units assigned within their locality, issued on March 22nd of 1985. And we have the EO 1040. It transferred the administrative control and supervision of the INP from the Ministry of National Defense to the NAPOLCOM. That happened on July 10, 1985. And we have the RA 6975. So it is otherwise known as the DILG Act of 1990, and it was enacted on December 13, 1990. So it established the PNP, the BFP, and the BJMP, as well as the Philippine Public Safety College. So the name Philippine National Police was created under this law, RA 6975. And here comes the RA 8551. It is known as the PNP Reform and Reorganization Act of 1998. So it was created on February 25, 1998, and this amended some provisions of the RA 6975. And we have the RA 9708. It is an act of extending for 5 years the reglementary period for complying with the minimum educational qualifications for appointment to the PNP and adjusting the promotion system thereof, amending for the purpose pertinent provisions of RA 6975 and RA 8551. This RA 9708, it focuses more on the educational qualifications when it comes to admission of a new police officer. And we have right here Article 16, Section 6 of 1987 Philippine Constitution. So the PNP was established because of this section, wherein our state shall establish and maintain one police force which shall be national in scope and civilian in character, to be administered and controlled by the National Police Commission, or the NAPOLCOM. The authority of local executives over the police units in the jurisdiction shall be provided by the law. And the PNP organization was divided into different interdependent functional units but coordinated to each other. In the different functional units of the PNP are we have the Bureau, it's the largest organic unit within a large department. PNP is under the Department of the ALG. And the PNP itself, it's a bureau. And we have the division, we have the primary division of the bureau. And we have the section, the functional units within a particular division. And we have the units, we have the functional groups within a section where there is specialization. So the PNP has units like SAF, CIDG, HPG. And we have section like women's section. We have the PCR, Police Community Relation, as a section. And here is the PNP organizational structure. The totality of this is called the Bureau. And we have right here the different administrative support units and operational support units. And these units have different specialization if you try to check. We have the anti-cybercrime group. Their focus is combating cybercrime. We have the Special Action Force, which its main function is on anti-terrorism, on insurgency, and so on. We have the Crime Laboratory that focuses on addressing or giving assistance when it comes to forensic evidences and so on. So there are a lot of functions, there are a lot of units, sections in the Philippine National Police. And we have right here territorial units. We have here post. So a fixed point or location to which an officer is assigned for duty, such as designated as desk police officer or crosswalk or an intersection for traffic duty. And we have route. This are length of street or streets designated for patrol purposes, sometimes referred to as line beat patrol. And when we say beat, it's an area assigned for police officer to conduct visibility. And sector, it's an area containing 2 or more beat, route, or post. In district, it's a geographical subdivision of a city for patrol purposes and usually with its own station. And we have right here the theories of police service. A police officer is a civil servant whose primordial duty is to preserve peace and order and maintain the public security and safety of every member of the community. So in home rule theory, the police officer is a servant of the public. Whereas for continental theory, the servant of the police officer is the higher authority. So this is observed in European countries, those under monarchy. In the Philippines, we adopt the home rule theory, wherein our police officer's job is to serve the civilians, serve the public. And we have right here the powers and functions of the PNP. It can be classified into 3. The first one is statutory powers. These are powers that are mandated by law. And first one, it's to enforce all laws and ordinances relative to the prosecution of lives and property, maintenance of peace and order, investigate and prevent crimes, exercise general powers to make arrest, detain an arrested person. Those are statutory powers of being a police officer. And also the second power of the PNP is regulatory powers. The regulatory powers issue licenses for possession of firearms and explosive, supervise and control the training and operations of security agencies. It's to train students who were taking up their baccalaureate, vocational, or technical courses. So those are some of the regulatory powers of the PNP. Next, these are the other duties provided by the PNP. So it's to enforce these are special duties. Enforce election laws, enforce laws involving agriculture. So it's not just about addressing crimes per se where there is an offender, but it also involves enforcing agricultural, environment, and natural resources law, um, enforce laws involving transportation, many other laws under the jurisdiction of various departments. Those are also some of the special powers of the police officer. Special powers or duties.